Hello and welcome. In today's video, we're going to be talking about how to encourage youth to participate in sports. So stay tuned as we delve into that question. What was once a rite of passage for so many kids who use sports, actually the numbers have been declining. We want to delve into reasons for that. We want to be talking about how to make this fun for kids, and we want to be talking about getting them into success loops, all those things and more. That's what we're going to be covering in this video, so stay tuned. There's been a cultural shift when it comes to youth sports. And at a younger age, this idea of travel and trying to compete against people from away, so you're competing against the best, so you get better, is beginning to take over. Along with that are the pressures to get extra coaching and specialization. So what was once at one time a very local kind of league structure in just about all the sports has now become regionalized and even nationalized. And when we think about some sports, like maybe gymnastics and the youngsters, particularly were young women, when you looked at like Olympic teams and saw how young some of the gymnasts were, you began to realize, boy, they must have started really young to get there. Or some of these young swimmers, or some of these other Olympic sports that might have had some really young athletes come in. But for the vast majority of us, it was local leagues playing against other kids in your town and community. And in the case of Little League, then your all-star team might go on. But when I was a kid, we made Little League team. The league kept going. We played into the summer. We played well into July before the playoffs and all. By the time my kids were doing Little League, end of school, middle of June, Little League was ended. Summer's about to begin, and there was no regular organized baseball. Kids begin to do other things. They begin to drop out. We need to begin to understand that with this pressure also to travel more, the higher stakes, the more coaching, the specialization that we're beginning to tell young kids to do, it takes some of the fun away from it. So kids begin to go, oh, I don't think I want this anymore. Now, outside this idea of putting pressure on to do more outside your community and travel, face all the best and all these things and raising that level, is we want kids to begin to feel successful. And part of that is putting them in a place where they can be successful. It doesn't mean we don't want them to be challenged and learn how to, deal with the losses and all that, because part of being in competitive sports means this idea of failure and losing, and it will be inevitable. But we do want to make them feel successful and get them experiencing some success right off. Inevitably, when you have a kid who's struggling athletically in a particular sport, they don't want to stick with it very long, right? It's only natural. You aren't feeling successful, and that kind of stinks. You don't feel good. And sadly, sometimes the culture around them, it's not encouraged this idea of keep trying, perseverance, you can get better, you can get better. And they give up. And I can tell you a couple of examples of, there's one kid I remember by the time Babe Ruth baseball came around. In Little League, he had not really been very good. He struck out a lot, made errors, he was kind of awkward. He began to grow faster and earlier than some of the other boys. So by the time he's 13 and then 14 years old, he was actually on the All-Star team of a very good All-Star team that went to the Babe Ruth World Series, and he was one of the key contributors. So as a kid who at 10 and even 11 in Little League was like, he's not really very good, he began to find a success And as he found more and more success and learned, he had great coaching, great parents who helped encourage him to find those successes, he began to get pretty darn good at baseball. Now, one of the reasons that this young boy kept at Little League, even though he was struggling to find some success, was it was fun, right? We as coaches, other people helped the competition. He liked that. Kept when he did find the success, we fed off that success, right? Trying to build on that success, built him up. So that made it fun. Tried to make the practices fun. So as he's working on some things, all right, let's add a little competition, a little fun, and joke around with some of these guys. Doing all of those little pieces, connecting them, right? Developing those friendships, that all made it fun enough that even though he wasn't finding a lot of success early, he kept at it so he could begin to get better. And as he got better and found more success, it became even more fun. And it just, you got into that positive feedback loop that's so important. And this is where, as parents and adults and coaches, is we got to understand the purpose, and we got to help the kids engage and connect things to like the highest values. And one of those highest values is belonging and being good natured, focusing on the little triumphs and the little moments. And all of that just helps build this culture of healthy competition and fun. So again, one of the things with that boy I was just talking about that became so important was that social connection he was getting. So even though he wasn't really finding much success, he felt like he was still part of the team. The coaches, parents, the kids themselves were still encouraging and supportive, even though he wasn't really doing very well. Right? He wasn't very successful. Sometimes he might have even cost them a game. But he himself was a very likable kid. So that just the whole belonging and community and that emotional support was in place to help encouraging him, connect him, and that helped the fun there while he was beginning to grow in himself and learn and get better at the sport. And as I have already said, it it feeds on itself. You get in that success loop, right? There's another story to tell about a young boy who, again, this idea of social connection and why it's so important and how it can feed success. And when I was 12 years old, I was one of the leaders of my Little League team. And a family had moved in from the Midwest into our town. I'm from Maine, New England town. And again, he was 9, so he was a bit younger than me. They joined our church, and he happened to be chosen for my Little League team. And again, he's new. He's from the Midwest. Things a little different. He had a little accent, and kids were teasing him. And I don't remember this, by the way, but apparently his mother told me this when they came back for a visit years later. He wasn't with them, but the mom and dad had come back. They had moved again sometime, I think, when he was like in high school. And mom said, I don't think you really fully appreciate what you did for Doug. And I like, what do you mean? Said he was getting teased a lot on the Little League team and was really getting discouraged. And you stuck up for him and you said to the other teammates, knock it off, guys, and give the kid a chance. And you kind of took him under your wing. And it totally changed things for him. He began to feel like he might be able to be part of that team. So by the time he turned 12, he became one of the better players in that league and made the All-Star team. And again, I had no recollection of that. But if you can build a culture where the coaches help encourage some of the older boys to do that for the new younger boys and welcome them in and help them along and kind of act as little mentors, it can totally change kids' attitudes and how they grow to develop that sport or love of sports. We just wrapped up yet another video, so please, I encourage you to subscribe to my channel, check out all the other videos. In particular, you might want to check out the video, How Do Sports Help Youth Mental Health? You also might want to check out my podcast because there's some really good interviews there. And come back, see us in another video. And until then, go out and live life to its fullest.